Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, January 11th meeting of the 2023 meeting of the East Lansing Planning Commission. Mr. Menzer, would you please call a roll?
I'd be happy to. Chair Bowman.
Here.
Vice Chair Sullivan.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Lapine is expected but not here currently. Commissioner Wagner will be absent this evening. Commissioner Hendricks.
Here.
Commissioner Boyd is expected to be absent this evening. Commissioner Janal.
Here.
We have 5, which is a quorum for the meeting.
Thank you. You have in front of you an agenda for this evening's meeting. I would move approval of that agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Denault and seconded by Vice Chair Sullivan. Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? That motion carries. This time we will begin our election of officers for 2023. I will accept the nominations from the floor for chair.
Nominate Joe Sullivan.
I believe I've been told that there's a second is not required for establishing a ballot.
I can look in the bylaws, but I don't know off the top of my head.
I think the last time we did this, somebody had reminded me that that's the case. And so that being the case, Joseph Sullivan is heard as a nominee for a chair position. Any other nominations from the floor? Very well then. I will, let's call for a vote. All those in favor of having Joseph Sullivan serve as the chair of the East Lansing Planning Commission for 2023, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? That motion carries. Congratulations.
Thanks, everyone.
I will continue, if that's okay, as in this position as for the next item, and then I'll be happy to pass the gavel over, the proverbial gavel over to you. We also need to fill the position of the vice chair for the Planning Commission for 2023.
Is it appropriate to nominate you, Dan Bowman, as your chair of this meeting for the position of vice chair?
I believe that it is.
There you go. Flip-flop.
Are there any other nominations from the floor? Seeing that, I believe I'm supposed to call for the close of the nominations, and we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of Daniel Bowman serving as the vice chair of the East Lansing Planning Commission for 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? That motion carries. And having said that, I will pass the proverbial gavel over to you, and as we begin with the approval of minutes.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. So now on to item 1.4, approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the draft minutes from the 12/14/22 meeting of the Planning Commission?
So moved.
All right. So motion from Vice Chair Bowman and seconded by Commissioner Williams. Thank you. On to item number 2.
We need to vote.
We have to vote.
We need to vote on that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great. Now on to item number 2, committee reports. I don't believe we have any committee reports tonight, so on to item number 3, staff reports.
Good evening, everybody. So I have several things, so it'll just take a couple minutes and I'll run through them. Planning Commission last met on the 14th of last year, 2022. Since that time, I sent you an email about this, but the follow-up on the last item that was on your agenda was the rezoning of 1788 Woodside. That rezoning following the Planning Commission's recommendation to another zoning district was withdrawn by the applicant. So that project ceases. The application's withdrawn. It won't go any further. It won't go on to council. I'm going to talk about a couple council updates that have happened since the last time we met, and then I'll look ahead at future meetings of council, both council and planning commission. So the council met on the last night in this room and approved the special use permit for 2040 Merritt Road, which is the adult use marijuana. So they had the medical approval, they're building the building, and they were able to secure approval for the adult sales component of that. So the applicant was at the meeting last night and did indicate they plan on being open in late spring. So, and if you've been by the site, it's significantly different than it was months ago, and the building is pretty much complete in terms of being weather tight and everything. So scheduled for next week's council, so the way the city council works is they'll have 2 regular meetings and then discussion-only meetings in between that. So they have a discussion-only meeting, and by that, it really just means they won't be taking any action. Scheduled for next Tuesday night on the 17th, and the item on that is something that's got a lot of community members talking, and is a discussion of, it's not a discussion of the application, but there's, if you've seen, there were some notices to install small cell wireless devices around the city. I don't have a lot of information on that tonight, and this is not intended to be a brief update on that. But I mean, those things they're part of the 5G infrastructure. Our initial take on it, and then there's, our city staff is reviewing all the information, and this is not a final answer, but it certainly looks like there's a preemption at the state level, and the local is not going to have a lot of control over that. That we may be obligated to issue permits for the installation of these devices. What's proposed and where is going to be seen shortly enough. I don't have that information right now, but it's going to be on council's meeting next week, and we are expecting a rep from the Crown Castle, the company. So they're kind of the middleman between the provider and the installer. They're like the permitting agent for, they work with these big companies like Verizon and T-Mobile. So that's expected at next week's council discussion-only meeting on the 17th. It's not a guarantee that the rep is going to be there from Crown Castle, but we're expecting that. So if anyone follows council agendas, I'm speaking to people at home right now, please keep an eye on the agenda for that, for information related to that potential project. On the 24th of the month, council is expected to discuss the request for proposals for the property that the city owns at Coleman and West. This is a follow-up of a previous discussion. They started talking about it. It was either late November. I think it was the meeting in November, and had a member that was absent and didn't finish the discussion. So they're going to be talking about that on the 24th. So there were 3 responses to the city's RFP, and the RFP went out very generally with kind of give us your proposals that addressing missing middle housing. And there was more to it, but that was the gist of it. So there were 3 proposals. Those are all on the city's website right now, and council will be getting into that on the 24th. Looking ahead at the Planning Commission agendas for the upcoming month, on the 25th, we'll have a follow-up on the site plan public hearing for tonight, 3410 West Road, assuming based on, following on the discussion tonight. I am expecting that a new site plan will be available for the Valley Court Park project. We've been working with a design team that has been reviewing all of the communications that have been received from residents, from this group, other groups in the city, and is doing their best to kind of coalesce all that into a plan. So I'm expecting to have that plan sent out to you before that meeting. The Parks Commission is going to talk about the plan at their meeting next week on the 18th. So as soon as I get a set of plans, I will plan on just forwarding those to the commission, so you'll have a little extra time to review that. And then of course the other component of that is the Section 61 review. So that would be on the agenda as well. And then also, and we can talk about this more under work plan later, but we're hoping to have some, I don't want to call them primers, but some discussions on the form-based code, the Shaping the Avenue, the actual document itself, the ordinance, because based on the discussion at the last meeting, it sounds like that would be a relevant, a good use of our time to get into that, because I know I need to get into it as well, so we can all do it together. And then I'm expecting that would be on several agendas following that. On the 8th, planning on having, we did just receive the application for construction of a building at 3400 West Road, which is the site immediately west of the site for tonight. And it was discussed months ago as forthcoming. So we did receive a site plan to construct a building at 3400 West Road for the tenants that are currently in 3410 that's going to be occupied by a Testeo. So we'll have that public hearing on the 8th, and then I'm expecting to have a public hearing there are not any notices that have gone out on this yet, and the application still has not been posted to the city website. But Falcon Point, there's a proposal to build 4 3-unit buildings in the middle area at Falcon Point, which is way up off State Road in the northern tier of the city. That was a project that did receive approval in 2020, and they never moved ahead, and the plan expired. So they're back. So it's 4 3-unit buildings, 12 total units. And then looking even further ahead, on the February 14th council discussion only meeting, I'm planning on addressing council on accessory dwelling units, tentatively doing that. So I think I've mentioned before, but I've been to a lot of different boards and commissions over the last couple of months, and the last stop is going to be, or maybe not the last stop, the next stop will be at the Council of Neighborhood Presidents meeting, I think on the 23rd. So then it seemed to make sense to go back to council at that point. So I would expect either around that meeting to bring that ordinance back to, maybe after that discussion only meeting, to bring that then back to the council, back to the Planning Commission, whether or not it gets an official referral or not. So more on that soon. And I did want to do a really quick follow-up. Hopefully Commissioner Wolf is watching. He had asked a question about a sidewalk on Merritt Road. So I hope that, just give me 1 minute, I'll go over kind of how that all went. The basic premise is the city had the site, had their Public Works office at 2000 Merritt Road, so years ago. That was prior to 2005. So the site was vacant until 2011. There was an industrial building, or is an industrial building on the site that has warehouses and offices. In 2007, that property was rezoned. It had previously been community facilities, and it was rezoned to business, B2. At that point, the owner of Red Cedar, what is now Red Cedar Spirits, and it was a different iteration at the time, came to the city, and they got a site plan and special use permit application. During that process, and I didn't read the minutes or the meeting or anything, but the requirement for extension of the sidewalk was essentially they were allowed to request a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals as to whether or not to build it. And I think Commissioner Wolf mentioned some of that previously. So, and indeed, in 2011, the ZBA heard the appeal to not build the sidewalk and approved them to not build it. So they were given approval not to build it. I think the idea being that at some point in the future that the city would come back. So that's really the end of that story. The rest of the story is it's very challenging to get sidewalks installed kind of post-project for a variety of reasons that you can probably imagine. So I've brought this issue up to our Public Works Director, and we'll talk about it as a team. It's probably one of several areas like that in the city that maybe were initially slated for connections and didn't get them due to whatever reasons. So that's definitely on staff's radar, but the how is a little more difficult. So we're going to look into it and talk more as a team about it, but I don't have any immediate answers on that. I can tell you kind of how we got there, but not maybe where we're going from here. So we're aware that there is a gap in the system at that point, and we'll work to address it in the future. So that being said, that was the last thing that I have, and certainly available for any questions.
Great, thank you, Peter. Any questions from commissioners on this?
A couple of
Vice
things.
Chair?
Well, actually, one of them was a comment and perhaps will lead to a question. Commissioner Wolf seemed to suggest that there was some, so I guess my question to you is, did you find any evidence that backed up Commissioner Wolf's recollection that there was some sort of agreement by the owner of Red Cedar Spirits, or whatever the iteration was at the time, or that there was some intention that, in fact, my recollection from his comments was that there was some agreement that they could even be, I don't know how it would be done, but they effectively taxed or billed for a sidewalk that was built, post-occupancy.
Yeah, there was, and the city, this is the challenging part of it. The city could assess the property for the cost of the installation. And I think they set up a payback. Essentially, the way it works is they set up a payback district where the city would build it, and there's a payback that would happen over time. At least I think that's how it would play out. There was discussion about that, but nothing formal. But I think that was the idea, was that at some point in the future where it's hard to imagine exactly what the thinking was, but when it was a more pressing connection to make, then that would, or maybe once the business was thriving or something, that they would make that happen.
Yeah, but he seemed to suggest that now that there's two ends to connect, it's time to make the connection. Then I have one other thing. What's the Planning Commission's role likely to be in the, as the RFP moves, the RFP for Coleman and West moves its way through the city? Is that something that the city's going to, like, as typical, they'd set a public hearing with the Planning Commission, or where does it, what's our next role, or do we have a role as that proceeds?
I'm not sure yet. I'll know more when council, so this is the first time I've been through a process like this. It's certainly council's purview to select one of the submittals or none of the submittals, or work with one of the submittals to completely change the submittal. I don't know yet. I mean, I guess there's one aspect where they may send one or multiple to you for advice, for a recommendation. I haven't given an indication one way or the other yet on that. In any sense, or any scenario there, whatever plan is selected would go through the site plan, possibly even special use permit process, and very likely a rezoning. So the commission would play a role in making recommendations on those initiatives. But in terms of the RFP part of it, I don't have a firm answer for you on that.
I guess it was, again, it's not really a question, but we haven't seen it yet. I've seen it in as much as it's been presented, that you and Tom had presented it, but beyond that, it's not become part of our formal agenda.
Right.
So, all right. Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions from commissioners? I did have one brief question, Peter. So for the Falcon Point proposal that we're potentially going to be seeing on the 8th, is that substantially the same proposal that had expired, or are they submitting a new proposal for the site?
It looks to be the exact same. And I just want to clarify, certainly for people that may watch this later, there was discussion, I want to say it might have been in the spring, or it may have been last winter. At the time, and I know there were some news articles about displacing some residents that were in the manufactured homes. This is not that project. And I'm not speaking to the future of that site. I don't know if the owner, at one point the owner was pursuing having some of the residents that are in the existing manufactured homes, which there aren't that many, to vacate the premises, take the units with them, and they were going to redevelop in that area. That is the way. That is not. They're proposing units on land that is not occupied by structures. I just want to clarify that for people that may see this later and are curious about it.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks.
On to item number 4. Are there any commissioner announcements? Seeing none. Item 5, communications from citizens. I will point out item 5.1, written communications. There were several communications from the public regarding the Valley Court Park proposal that is in the agenda packet online. Item 5.2, verbal communication from audience. Are there any members of the audience that have any comments, typically on items not on the forthcoming agenda?
I'm good.
All right. Is there any members of the public online with comments?
There are not any members of the public in the queue.
Great, thank you. Moving on to item number 6, public hearings. Item 6.1, we have a site plan application for 3410 West Road. The applicant is here today, but I think we're going to go to Peter first. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, so I'll walk you through. I'm sure everyone at this point had a chance to review the meeting packet. So for those of you that are watching this at home or maybe later, there's a meeting packet online. You'll just have to navigate to the calendar for the meeting calendar for today, and you'll find it. And inside that is a staff memo, which includes really my review of the project, or review, or just going over how it apply, or different ordinances provisions apply. But also there are the application itself, so plans and other supplemental materials. But quite simply, it's a approximately 6,000 square foot addition to the building. There's 2 areas where they're proposed for addition, in the northwest corner and the southwest corner. There's also about a 1,200 square foot HVAC chiller accessory building to the east of the primary building. It's constructed on the, proposed for construction. This is all, and I'm sure the applicant will fill in details to accommodate a new tenant, Attesteo, and I say a little bit in the memo, but it's, they're a drivetrain component, auto component testing company. That in the building, if you saw the floor plan, is going to be divided up into these modules where they do different testing. But your review really is just for the addition. It's for a site plan, so it's the additions. But the biggest changes. So since this is an existing site, really the big change is the two building additions, the accessory building, and then they're reworking the parking lot a little bit to add some parking kind of in the middle of a drive on there on the east side of the building. I do want to note that this property and this project is subject to the conditional rezoning from 2020. So this site was rezoned to M1 and included conditions related to limiting the use of this building to those that are listed in the staff memo, and it's a series of industrial uses, and really what were excluded were the marijuana uses. And this is it's the exact same conditions that were put on the rezoning of 3400 West Road just to the west. That's a rezoning you saw late last year. So it's the limited uses, and then also subjecting future uses to these performance standards that are from our OIP, our Office Industrial Zoning Park, or Office Industrial Park Zoning District. And so those are really their protections. They're meant to provide protections against things like noxious odors, smoke, particulates, vibrations, other potential impacts from the types of uses that are allowed in those zoning districts, which are industrial. So there may be uses like that. So this project complies with that. I mean, certainly maybe not the after. That's to be seen. We're certainly expecting that it'll meet all those performance standards. But in terms of qualifying and being a use that qualifies under current zoning and under the restrictions of that conditional rezoning, this project does meet that threshold. I just want to see if there's anything else. There's a couple things I want to add. I noted in the staff memo that the plans, that the electric car station, so this project is not subject to you have to have 50 spaces to get the electric car charging station. I noted in the staff memo that they weren't on the plan. I did receive an email. I haven't uploaded it to the website showing where they are showing 4 spaces, so I'll get that to you after this meeting. And also, I made a note here in the public art requirement that we were considered all as one project. That was an error on my end. So that this project is subject to the art requirement. We're moving ahead with that, as is the project that you'll see for 3400 West Road, and this was simply an error on my part. Everything else is in terms of meeting the ordinance is set. I mean, they're good on parking. This, I noted in the memo that our ordinance does not really have this use in the ordinance. My opinion is that there's plenty of parking on the site for the proposed use. The applicant's comfortable with this amount. It seems to serve the existing tenants, and they're adding parking to accommodate the new tenants. So it seems like it's going to work fine. Then they are adding some bicycle parking, so they have to have 5, and they're providing 5. The applicant's certainly here to fill in the rest of the information, and obviously I'm here for any questions.
Great. Any questions from commissioners for Peter? Okay, on to the applicant. Thank you.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back here. Some different faces, and certainly congratulations on being the chair, and Vice Chair Bowman, thank you for leading us so capably these last few years. As Peter so clearly laid out, I'm here on behalf of 3410 West Road to discuss the additions to the building to accommodate the use desired by Attesteo. I will say, just in the lead up, and I'm actually working on the number of these facilities in the state, there are very few. These are a very rare facility overall, and certainly this type of use in East Lansing is very rare. But we're very excited about it. It's going to be an incredible facility when they're complete, and one of the most technically capable ones in the world by far. And these people are not new to this. They run, I believe the number is 150 of these test cells across, it's 6 sites in Germany, 1 in China, and 1 in Japan. And East Lansing was the community selected they were against one of the South Carolina communities that is known for doling out impressive things to people who want to show up, and another site in Ohio. And these folks started in Metro Detroit and searched for industrial properties there and didn't really find what they wanted, both from a property perspective and from a community perspective. Their goal as a company is to bring young technicians, electricians, mechanics through an apprenticeship program much more like you would see in Germany, especially in Germany, for industrial apprenticeship and things like that. So they're working on partnering with LCC, they're working on partnering with MSU to bring a pipeline of technicians and operators and things like that into the facility. It's something that they believe in. They believe that investing in the training of young employees pays off throughout the lifetime of their tenure with the company. And so obviously as a landlord and as a developer, you're always looking for a good tenant, and sometimes that just means the check shows up every month. These folks are different. We genuinely feel like they're going to be an addition to the community. And it's maybe another interesting fact that the facility that we're proposing here will end up being probably their densest facility in the world. What we're pulling off on a per square foot basis is unusual for them beyond these walls. And so it's taken us a little bit longer to get the engineering right, and we've had to do some challenging things architecturally, but we're gonna get them done. And part of that, and part of the reason we need to expand the building, is that there are a couple of specific test cell types. And if you look at the floor plan, which is on, Peter, help me out here. 46? You will see that in the northeast corner, there's a designation that says NVH. And an NVH cell is, again, a rare bird amongst rare birds. It measures noise, vibration, and harshness. So it's the reason that you don't hear your transmission when you shift, or you don't hear mechanical components shake as you're driving around. This particular cell will require at the end a 20 by 20 by 3 foot thick concrete slab embedded with steel plates to isolate the rest of the building from this particular cell so that it can measure accurately. That takes up enough space where we knew we needed to expand the building. They needed other function space, so the building had to get expanded. And as you can see, we're basically just filling in the corners of the existing building. When we constructed the facility in 2003, we had semis that pulled, we had 4 semis that pulled straight through the building. And so we needed to actually pull the building back to get the semi-turn radius out. That's no longer required. They're not dealing with semis here. So we've taken the opportunity to fill in the corners, and I think I'm glad to answer any questions about the use, about the building, or about the project that I can for you.
Thank you for the explanation. It's helpful. Any question from commissioners? Seeing none, I will just ask briefly, what is the estimated completion date for the project?
So the project ends up happening in a couple of phases, and if you again look at the floor plan, and I will do my best to demonstrate it for those of us that don't see quite as well as we used to, but if you draw a line down the middle of the building, if you look where the office is, the right-hand side, the first 11 test cells are the first phase of construction, and then the second phase will begin pretty much immediately after that. As soon as we obtain the building permit, depending on some lead times, because some of the items that we're purchasing for this project are, I think we had a transformer that was on a 35-week lead time, and whenever I see power go out someplace in this country, I think my transformer order is going to get pushed. But we are on an aggressive schedule. This first phase is going to take probably into the summer, and then the second phase should be done by fall. But again, we are beholden to the people who make 500-ton water chiller systems. And there aren't a lot of them sitting on the shelf, so like every other project, we've got some supply chain stuff, but we're confident that we're going to move forward and finish up with the full project by fall. And since I have a moment, I would like to say, and I hope he's watching, that we will miss Commissioner Wolf greatly. I always enjoyed interacting with him, and no matter what you brought to this commission, he had a well-considered question, and I appreciate that. So, Commissioner Wolf, if you're watching, thank you, and all the best in the future. And that's all I have. Thank you.
I second that motion about.
All right.
Okay. Peter, this is an item we're going to have to see at the next meeting, right?
Yeah,
Because it's a
so
public hearing.
tonight's a public hearing, so you'll, your typical process is, per your bylaws, is 2 meetings, public hearing, and then recommendation at the following.
Right? Okay, well,
So, excuse me, may I just, on point of clarity, so this is not the public hearing?
This is the public hearing.
Yeah. okay.
Yeah.
So we have to open and close the public hearing?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
sorry if that wasn't clear.
okay, any comments from the public?
We should officially open the public hearing, like say those words, and then officially close it.
Okay. We're,
In between, ask for comments from
okay,
both.
so we're officially opening the public hearing?
Yep,
And then we take correspondence with
Exactly.
and then you ask for comments
Okay,
from either.
any comments from the public? Seeing no comments from members of the public. Any public members online with any comments?
There are no members in the queue.
All right, no members in the queue, so that closes the public hearing. Is that the term?
Yeah, that's
All right,
good, yep.
great. Moving on to the next item, number 7, old business. Seeing none on the agenda, we will move on. Oh. Bye. We will move on to item number 8, new business. Item number 8.1 is a 2023 PC work plan. I will leave it to you, Peter.
All right, thank you. So, I included, let's start, back up. We had the best of intentions in 2022 to get as much as possible done. As always, there's a variety of reasons why we couldn't get everything done. Some of these projects, they're noted in the staff memo, are pretty big things. They just are. That takes a lot of time, and I think we made significant progress this year. And when I say we, I mean I'm both people in this room, but also my planning team. And we don't have a big crew, I think you've probably realized. So we're really working to chip away at this thing. So we've talked a lot over the last number of months about some of these. So I'm going to run through them real quick. The update to the master plan that was slated for 2022, it has to happen in 2023. And by has to happen, we don't have to change the plan itself. There's no obligation on the municipality to make any changes to the plan. You can say that we looked at the plan is great, we're going to keep the plan. We're going to change the date. You don't even have to do that. But you are obligated to take a look at it. So in the past, what we've talked about was limiting the scope of that review to the map, the future land use map, which is what we've been talking about kind of in stages over the last couple months about where are the best places. And so the scope that I've kind of, both internally and that we've talked about here, is when looking at the map to look at it through a housing lens, specifically towards areas that may lend themselves well to potential increases in density, specifically in meeting the components of missing middle housing that right now that we don't have. So that's those different areas of the city that Taylor and I have showed you are areas that in our review and based on some criteria that is laid out in the master plan and about where that might be the best. So whatever, it's 5 or 6 places that we've looked at. That doesn't have to be the end, the end of the update, but the master plan update's a long process. The 2018 plan took, I think former chair, Vice Chair Bowman was a part of that, and I've been part of it in another community. They can take years. And this particular master plan, it took a long time. A lot of people were involved. So, and it's not, I've looked at it recently, there's not that much that's not still relevant. So the idea was to really limit the scope of that and try not to make a multi-year update and instead try to do just a quick check-in. Update the map, maybe update some other items that are, obviously there has to be a review and there may be some other kind of quick items to touch. So I'm not dictating this to you, but this is kind of my idea of how this might work, just to limit the scope and the time. So that's something that has to happen in 2023, so I would say that's a big priority. Tackling the northern tier, this group has talked about the northern tier and housing for a while, really through the lens of housing and through the master plan update. They put a kind of a hold on that discussion to see how the RFP and the Coleman and West property went. So I expect that discussion, as noted earlier, to start again here soon. So we may know more about that, and that may lend itself really well to the future land use map update and possibly rezoning of some land in that area to change from right now, which is designated essentially for large-scale office development, to something that might accommodate either offices or residential, or both. So that's something that's kind of, these are all midstream really. Tackling the items in the near-term housing action plan, we talked about a lot of these. It's particularly the accessory dwelling units. I mentioned that earlier. We have kind of the workings of a draft ordinance. I told you I'm doing my road show, talking to the different boards and commissions in the city, getting support, and I've got a lot of support, at least in concept, to the idea. Where the rubber hits the road, I think, is talking to actual property owners in these neighborhoods, and we'll see kind of what some initial feedback is on that, and then getting it to council and seeing if that's a policy priority that they want to take. And then next steps would be an amendment to the ordinance. So more on that really soon. So a lot of these, I think my message is we've made a lot of progress and they're like on the precipice of conquering, at least getting some of these going, but aren't quite there yet. Redevelopment ready certification is a whole project unto itself. It's maybe a larger goal for the community, but there are a lot of things that have to come together to that. At some point in the meeting, I can give a better breakdown on that, as well as kind of the pros and cons of what certification means, what it may get for this community, but also what it doesn't do, and kind of the things that lead to that. So we didn't really make any progress on that this year. Some things that have been discussed in the past. Vice Chair Bowman brought up the reestablishing overnight street parking. I think, and certainly this commission can talk about that. It may ultimately be it's a policy decision that council would have to make. It's not really a zoning thing, but there's no reason the commission can't talk about it, but ultimately that would end up being a council discussion, not an ordinance that would start with the commission. Creating a citizen engagement plan aimed at increasing public awareness and feedback on issues before the Planning Commission. This ties really well into the redevelopment ready certification, and it's something I think is valuable time that we can put staff time towards. And then scheduling an additional joint meeting with boards and commissions in the city. I think that what I heard was we'd had a joint meeting with the Housing Commission. It seemed like everybody really enjoyed it. So, and I know the Housing, I don't speak for them, but it seemed like the Housing Commission really enjoyed it as well. So pursuing more opportunities like that to engage with other boards and commissions. So we can certainly tackle those. And we're making progress on the first, but I was hoping that this would be an opportunity to at least begin the discussion about what, if there are other things. I mean, this is a lot on the plate already, but are there other, and also consider we're going to, because at the beginning of the meeting, I know Commissioner Lupini didn't hear this part, but we have, at least for the next couple months, several items lined up for at least development projects, actual like permit stuff that statutorily you need to review. And then we have these kind of policy initiatives that we're also working on. So are there other, I guess the question, and I wasn't expecting an answer tonight, was are there other things that we need to get on the radar? Because at least the way I operate is I like to kind of identify what it is. So if there's an item that you do want to work on, we can kind of break that down into tasks and try to figure out like what kind of information that we need to make this happen and start scheduling discussions with the commission. So I was hoping to just get the ball rolling here, and if you have anything, I'll certainly take notes and maybe continue the discussion at the meeting on January 25.
I don't have an additional suggestion, but I do have a question about whether or not having an established and implemented form-based code is a component of the redevelopment ready certification. I'm recalling that it is, but so I'm just curious about that.
I don't think form-based code is a requirement of redevelopment ready certification. However, a big component of form-based code being administrative approvals
Exactly.
and non-council, is a big part of it. So I in my mind have separated that out because one of them is potentially extremely challenging, and the form-based code, the ordinance itself wouldn't be the hard part, but the carrot being the express from the developer's perspective, kind of the faster review, that knowing what the community wants, and with form-based code, one of the big advantages from the developer perspective is this knowledge that what they're proposing to the community is something they already want. So there's a lot for them on their end in terms of kind of knowing the process and knowing what to expect. Right now, the system would be still that if a project is proposed, they would go through the regular planning zoning review. So public hearings at the planning commission, public hearings at council, and we don't have that built into our system right now. So
Yeah, it's the streamlined development
Yeah.
process that I'm recalling as being a
Yep.
component of the redevelopment.
It is.
ready
It's a big part of
process. And we don't really have a good feel here at the planning commission about how city council feels about that streamlined development process. So I'm finding it kind of clunky to talk about these things that I find related where we don't really know what the overall policy direction is for the city.
If you're, and I do not speak for council at all. I did talk to them at a discussion-only meeting towards the end of last year. I could send the link around. There was some feedback from council that may give you an idea where they're at with that. I can send it around tomorrow.
That'd be helpful, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other comments or questions from commissioners? I did have one. So Peter, to your question about additional potential things we could discuss or work on, one of the things that comes to mind for me is the Valley Court plan. And I know during one of the meetings there was a discussion about there potentially being phases for redeveloping or rehabilitating portions of that park. I think something we could potentially work on is after, hypothetically, the first phase for this farmers market expansion is completed, potentially we could envision what the rest of the phases of this Valley Court plan look like. So that's what comes to mind. And then I did have just a couple other questions about some of the items that you listed, if none of the other commissioners have any. Okay. So you said for the update to the 2018 master plan that we have a deadline in 2023. Is there a specific date that we have the deadline, or is it just by the end of the year?
There isn't, and I'm not sure that there is a burdensome oversight from the state on that. It's just something that the law requires that cities review these plans. I think we should get it done during calendar year 2023. But I don't know if there is kind of a stick. I don't think there's necessarily punishment. We don't lose our master plan, the validity of our master plan. But I think that we need to get it done within 5 years of the adoption.
Okay, and then the numbering convention that you used here, is this sorted in any particular order of importance?
No.
Or okay, for me, just visually, I'm having a difficult time determining what the timeline is for a lot of these items, like which one of these things that we should prioritize if, say, we have a gap or we don't have a lot of applications before the commission. So I think for me personally, that'd be helpful to understand what some of the deadlines or expectations are for the various items listed here.
Okay. I can flesh this out. With it probably part of it, since some of these have been started, I can give you kind of where we're at, where I expect that we might be, and then kind of what could, for the other items, when we start, how long it would take, that kind of thing.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, moving on to item number 9, commissioner concerns. Vice Chair?
To a degree, we have a current vacancy on the commission, and I noticed this, whoever thought to do this, I think it was a pretty clever thing to do, to add the number of vacancies of all the boards and commissions at the bottom of the
Yeah.
council agenda.
Yep.
Brilliant. Please add the planning commission to that list.
I saw that was
Yeah.
not on there. Yeah, I will.
Yeah. And then that way, I think actually, I can't remember what it was, maybe the mayor pro tem had mentioned there's a list, and it's easy to see now. You don't have to go looking for that. You don't have to go to the website. It's basically on every one of their agendas for people to see where the need is greatest.
Great flag. All right. That brings us to item number 10, adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
All right. Commissioner Williams, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Lapine? All right. We are adjourned at 7:54.